What's up, my ducks and drakes? Welcome to the Crawdad Lake. Today we'll be reading Losing Control by ElliottGreen333 on Wattpad. Everyone knows Virgil is hiding something. He's acting weird. He barely eats. He isn't coming out of his room. Oh, but if only they knew. Part 1. Virgil. My eyes shut open, like bullets, when I heard a slight noise from somewhere around me. I was a pretty light sleeper, so I wasn't super surprised that it woke me up suddenly. My body felt numb, but I knew whatever it was that made that noise, I had to fight it. Using my hands and whatever strength I could muster, I pulled myself up from my bed, leaning against my headboard with the rest of my dead-weight body still on the main bed. It was really dark, but my eyes had adjusted just enough so that I could make out some objects and fill in the rest. I was in my room. My room. Strange. It didn't feel like my room. It was so much colder. But no other room in the house looked like this. Looked like my room. My door at the end of the bed with my dresser right next to it. My dresser was covered in stickers that read My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, some other of my favorite bands. The wall to my right housed the door to the bathroom, but the door was closed, so I couldn't see inside. My muscles started to move in favor of going to the bathroom. Maybe the noise came from there. Maybe I could just wash my face and make this all go away. And that this plan until I heard the noise again coming from my left. I slowly turned my attention towards the corner of the room that housed my closet, which was open. Didn't I close it before I went to sleep? Now I'm even more confused. Still leaning in the favor of my bathroom, I swung my legs over my bed and felt my feet hit the floor. Now, I was facing the bathroom door. I could feel my breathing start to become jagged and my hands shake. Why was I like this? I pushed myself up and onto my feet, feeling dizzy as I fully stood up. When the world stopped spinning around me, I started to slowly move towards the bathroom. I was going slow, but my heart was beating fast. I kept slowly moving, hearing faint whispers around me. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but as soon as I touched the bathroom door handle, they stopped. I opened the door, turning the light, and I walked straight to the sink. I looked at myself in the mirror. The bags under my eyes were black and deep. My dark brown eyes were almost like black holes as they swallowed the lights from the bathroom. My mouth was parted slightly, which allowed me to notice my dry and cracked lips. I'm a mess, I muttered to myself as I bent over the sink and turned on the water. Cupping the water in my hands, I threw it on my face and scrubbed lightly with my hands. I took a couple of breaths, feeling a little better. I looked back up at myself in the mirror and saw my eyes glowing bright yellow. All in one motion, I felt chains attached to my wrists, gluing me to my place. The ends of the chains were shooting up from the ground as they started slowly to sink in the ground. With my wrists still at the ends, I was pulled to my knees. Whispers started to return, except this time there were shouts, yelling at me from all angles, calling me names. Worthless, pathetic, hated. I couldn't even cover my ears. I just had to be there and take it all as it came. Then a loud laugh came above the shouting. I felt the water start to surround around me. I didn't turn off the water. The water kept rising and rising. Before I knew it, I couldn't breathe. All I could see was the glowing yellow eyes reflecting into the water and back at me. That was it. I had lost. What would the others think? How? Unless I can't even save myself. I started roughly swaying left and right. The last thing I saw was bubbles as I closed my eyes for what I was hoping was the last time ever. Part 2. I slowly opened my eyes again, but instead of seeing water and yellow reflection, I saw a blob of light blue with a darker blue and a red one on either side of it. The light blue blob has arms on both of my shoulders. I couldn't feel their hands, but I knew that they were there. My vision was still blurry, and I wasn't being violently shaken by the light blue blob. Slowly, the shaking stopped, and I was lowered back down to my eyes fully open, but not fully in focus. Thank goodness, you're awake, the light blue blob said as it wrapped itself around me. My brain was super confused, but like a ton of bricks, it made sense. I hugged the blob back loosely when I realized it was Patton. Looking to the right of the Patton was Logan, who had his glasses in one hand while he was pinching his nose with the other. He was decompressing, I could tell. On Patton's other side was Roman, who still had a worried expression on his face. Patton slowly let go. I did the same. He put his hands on my shoulders, and I looked into his eyes. He looked right back into mine. They were calming light brown, and his glasses gave off no flare from the natural light coming through the closed blinds of my window. "Now, what happened, kiddo?" Patton questioned. My heart, which had returned to normal speed, began to palpitate again. I hugged my knees and looked down. It's okay if you're not comfortable. No, Virgil, it's okay if you're not comfortable telling us yet, Roman said abruptly, by the time Logan putting his glasses back on and resumed to his normal state of being. To be perfectly honest with myself, I didn't know why I had that nightmare. It was just, I just... Wait. I paused. How did you know I was having a nightmare? Pan looked to Logan, and Roman did the same. Logan gave a sigh and shook his head slightly. First of all, you were mumbling and yelling in your sleep, which we could hear from the commons, Logan explained. Second of all, that was no nightmare, Virgil. That was a panic attack. A big one, too, I'd say. With that, he tightened his tie, and everyone looked back to me. Who was yelling? Mumbling? That must have been what the bubbles were at the end of the dream. Me yelling. I snapped my thoughts when Patton put his hand on my face and our eyes met again. You're sure you're gonna be okay, kiddo? Someone could stay in here with you for a while. No, I'm feeling better now, I said. With that, Logan turned on his heels and headed towards the door. He waited until Roman left behind, which left Patton still worryingly looking at me. Come on, Patton. He wishes to be left alone. Logan coughed. Patton slowly stood up and made his way towards the door. Logan looked at me one last time. If you need anything, you know you could contact us. Any of us, Logan said before closing the door and leaving me to my own thoughts. I curled myself and leaned back against the headboard, just like I did in the dream. I immediately shot up, now wanting to recreate the horror I had felt before. I sighed a heavy sigh, and I sat at the end of my bed, cross-legged, looking at my bed covers and getting lost in thought. I felt the room get colder and colder. My breathing picked up, my anxiety picking up full speed. Something's not right. Why am I having an attack? I feel fine. I felt something crawling up my arm, which I assumed was my arm hair spiking up with the sudden chill of the air. I started to shake, the crawling on my arm rising up my whole body, and I realized a little too late what that crawling was coming from. Sudden, a yellow snake was wrapped around my mouth tightly. I tried desperately, but I could not get him off of me. I was panicking even more. He was here. He's here. I know it. What do I do? I felt another slithering snake come up my arm and wrap around my hands, trying to tie them together tightly. I was squirming so violently. I was surprised I hadn't passed out from the exhaustion. I started to stand up from the bed and started aimlessly moving around my room. I pulled against the snakes on my arms, yelling into the snake around my mouth, which was doing nothing. I started banging my wrist against the wall, trying to loosen the snakes, but they wouldn't budge. I didn't care if the others heard this. I gave it a couple more tries before I stopped and started breathing heavily. It had worked up panic and sweat and ended up sinking to the floor, my back against the wall. Catching my breath, a figure in front of me appeared. It wore black pants and military boots. As I looked up, I saw a black cape, following which was weird because there was no breeze. Going up to their face, my eyes delayed. Looking down upon me was a half-snake-faced liar. Deceit. I pushed my back against the wall more, trying to get out, trying to find an exit, but to no avail. He slowly bent down to kneel and put his hand under my chin so that our eyes became locked together. Like Patton's calm and soothing eyes, Deceit's were sharp and narrow. Not to mention, one was a snake eye. He laughed a tiny bit as I squirmed. Hello, Virgil. Did you miss me? I shook my head no. I hadn't realized until now, but I was still heavily shaking and tears were flowing down my eyes. Desi wiped the tears and whispered, Don't worry, my raven. Our eyes were still locked. I was so uncomfortable. I couldn't handle this anymore. But yet, I couldn't do anything about it. My legs were like dead weight. I was frozen in fear. Deceit saw this. I knew he did. It's okay, love. It'll be over soon. He put his hand over my forehead. His fingers spread out. Slowly he moved his hand down to my eyelids, closing them. Everything was black. Part 3. Roman's POV. The day started out fairly normal. I woke up in my bright, shiny room, the curtains drawn back so the natural light was coming through. Isn't that just the best way to start the morning? My alarm clock started beeping, so I sat straight up, my feet now touching the floor as I turned off the rather annoying beeping noise. I fully extended my arms and stretched and gave a musical yawn. Pushing myself fully to my feet, I ventured towards the closet. At the moment, I was shirtless, with only sweatpants and bunny slippers on. It was my usual nighttime attire, but, dare I say it, I found it better than the other side's nighttime attire. In my closet were my usual clothes, the whole princely outfit hanging on a hanger with a plastic casing around it, like a prom dress or a wedding suit. Oddly enough, because we weren't filming today, I was more in favor of wearing something a little less, but still fabulous. Instead, I reached for my red hoodie with a crown in the middle as a design as some average jeans. I looked in full-length mirror behind me. I brushed my hair out of my face, styling it to my liking. Finally, I put some socks on and called myself complete. I then proceeded to make my way down the stairs where I could see Logan in the kitchen making some toast. He was on his phone, I could only assume reading a science article or something, and wearing his normal clothing. Maybe he just doesn't have a fully variety of clothing like I do. Probably, more or less. He didn't want such variety. The toaster shut up with his toast, and he continued the motions of putting it on a plate and buttering it, without looking away from his phone. As I ventured more into the kitchen, my presence noticed by Logan. He briefly looked up at me. Good morning, Roman, he said, making his way towards the chair in the living room. Good morning to you, Logan, I said cheerfully. He seemed unamused, but still gave a subtle hum. I then looked around, noticing we were missing the other two. I quickly turned to Logan, putting my elbows on the kitchen counter in slight curiosity. By any chance, Logan, have you seen the other two? Before Logan could answer, Patton came beaming down the stairs in his usual light and happiness. He smiled at me before saying, Good morning, Roman. I waved, smiling too. I couldn't help it. Patton being so bubbly made me want to match his energy, almost like a competition. But he would win any challenge involving happiness. He then turned to Logan, beaming even brighter, if that was even something he could do at that point. Morning, Lo. Looking snazzy as ever, he cheered. Logan just nodded. Things as well, Patton. Logan then turned to me. That answers half of your question, but as for Virgil, I have not seen him yet this morning. I simply nodded at Logan's words. I could hear Patton behind me, rummaging through the fridge, finding some jam inside the glass jar. He continued to hold the jar in his hand, and was about to set it down. Then we all heard something. A full scream of terror echoed through the vents. It came from upstairs. I turned towards the stairs, knowing only one person could have made that type of scream. I heard glass shatter in Patton's direction. I quickly turned to see he had dropped the jam jar onto the floor, but that didn't seem to bother him as he ran full speed upstairs, with Logan at his heels. I was a little late to follow, but we were all at the door at the same time. Patton opened the door, working first. I don't even think Patton thought twice about knocking. He was in full dad mode. We all piled into the room and saw him. He was lying on his bed, trembling, with tears pouring down his closed eyes. Patton then went to Virgil's side, shaking him, trying to get any type of reaction from him. Virgil, kiddo, please, wake up. Nothing. Patton then took him by the shoulders, putting one knee next to Virgil on the bed, and started to shake him violently. I could only imagine what he was doing in the nightmare. Towards Logan, who looked like he was going to tell Patton to stop. Even if Logan did say that, I don't think Patton would listen. Before Logan could say anything, Virgil's eyes slowly opened, and he started to look around. Even though he was looking around, I could tell he didn't know where he was or who we were. His breathing was off, and his face began to become dry, and his tears stopping. Patton had stopped shaking him. "Thank goodness, you're awake!" Patton exclaimed, wrapping his arms around him. Virgil stiffly wrapped his arms around Patton, which made my heart skip a little beat. I was glad he was starting to recognize us again. His breathing returned to more normal level once again. Patton had worked his magic and fully calmed him down. Pardon, Patton went back to dad mode. "Now what happened, kiddo?" Patton questioned. Virgil looked apprehensive, unsure if he even knew what happened. It's okay if you're not comfortable telling us yet," I butted in. Virgil looked thankful that I said that. I smiled lightly, but Virgil sighed and began to speak. It was just, and he paused. "Wait, how did you know that I had a nightmare?" I looked to Logan, who gave us a quick sigh and tightened his tie. "First of all, you were mumbling and yelling, which we could hear from the commons. Second of all, that was no nightmare, Virgil. That was a panic attack. A big one, too, I'd say." Logan finished. Virgil's eyes looked glossed over, like he wasn't fully awake or in the conversation yet, but I knew he was. Patton put his hands on his shoulders again. "You sure you're okay, kiddo? Someone could stay here with you for a while," Patton said sweetly. I was ready to volunteer to stay with him, because I'll admit, I kinda have a thing for him. "No, I'm feeling better now," he spoke up. Damn it. Logan turned towards the door, opening it wide for us. I was the first to go, as I respected his wishes to be alone. Perhaps I'd want to be alone too if I just went through whatever hell Virgil had stepped into. Back into the kitchen with Logan and Patton following after me shortly. Patton grabbed a broom and started cleaning up the shattered glass in the kitchen. I sat in the living room couch, trying to collect my thoughts, which were completely jumbled at this point. What was his nightmare about? Does he want to talk about it? He said he was okay, but is he? In one swift motion, I stood up and headed back upstairs. I didn't care if he didn't want to be bothered. He needed to get it off his chest. This would make him feel better. I know it. I ran out of the corner to his room and stood in front of the door. I wanted to do this, but the devil on my shoulder was pulling me back. All I wanted to do was help. Could I not even do that? I ended up reaching out for the doorknob, turning it, and entering the room. But to my surprise, he was gone. Part 4. Patton. As I was swiping the glass off the kitchen floor from the jam jar I dropped, I got to thinking, what was Virgil's nightmare about? That very kind of thought made my skin crawl, and I continued the sweep. My hair stood on end when I looked over towards the living room to see Logan was watching me. Maybe he noticed how unfocused and lost in thought I looked. We both blushed, and I looked away quickly. I've always liked Logan. I don't know what it is about him. He just understands my goofy, childlike nature, and that makes my heart flutter. Logan cleared his throat, as if collecting his thoughts one final time before he spoke out. "Patton, is something troubling you?" I looked up at the flustering in his words. He cared. I sighed and I leaned on the broom against the kitchen counter. I took a step towards the living room, suddenly feelings of sharp pain in my bare foot. "Ow!" I yelled as I picked up my foot and saw it. The ball of my foot was swarming with blood. I must have missed a piece of glass. Logan quickly came into the kitchen and examined my foot. I could see the gears in his head cranking. He helped me sit on the kitchen countertop and started to stop the wound from bleeding further with a paper towel. I smiled at him deeply. "Thank you, Logan." He looked at me and gave me a small nod and a smile. "You're very welcome, Patton." He was speedily cleaning my foot. Taking the first aid kit from under the sink, he started to wrap a band-aid around my foot. "There, all better," he said, as he started to pack the first kit way. As he did so, he turned back to me. "Now, about my previous question," Logan said. I looked down at my bandaged foot. "I don't know, Lo," I began. "It's just, you know that Virgil's nightmares have been getting worse. I can only imagine the fear that flows through him every time he wants to sleep." Logan put his hand on my shoulder. I looked down at his hand, and then looked up at him, his dark brown eyes looking deeply into mine. I couldn't help but smile lightly, and blush even more. "You're a great father, Patton. I know it's hard to sit and watch as Virgil panics, but just know, you're not a bystander in all of this," Logan said softly. That was all I needed to hear. I gave Logan a hug, and he slowly returned it. When we pulled apart, I smiled brightly at Logan. "Thank you again, Logan. You're the best." "Heartily," he replied with a small smile. I jumped off the countertop, grabbing the broom handle once more. I began sweeping all the glass into the dustpan and throwing it away. As I put the broom and dustpan away, I realized that Roman had moved from his spot in the living room, that he was just when I originally started cleaning the remains of the jam jar. "Hey, Lo, where and why did Roman leave?" I asked. Logan looked at me and then to the stairs, probably piecing together the story in his mind. "As to where he went, I believe he proceeded to the second floor," Logan explained. As for why, Logan was interrupted by fast-paced footsteps we heard coming from downstairs. Roman appeared, out of breath and frantic. He looked to us when he collected his breath, and his thoughts stated, "Virgil's gone!" Part 5. Virgil. My head began to throb as my ears rang white noise. The light slipped through my closed eyelids. I made a tiny groan as I slowly lifted my head and opened my eyes. At least, I think my eyes were open. All I could see was darkness, but there was a small yellow light above me, which didn't help at all. As my body parts slowly woke up, I tried my best to move, but it was no use. I felt ropes on my wrists and ankles. The ropes tied tightly, and I started feeling the pins and needles forming. The rest of my dead weight body was sitting in a chair. My breathing started to speed up and became uneven. Oh God, not now, not here. I already feel useless enough when having a panic attack. Having one while being tied only makes me feel worse. I started to tap my fingers on the chair to make my mind off the situation, or at least to the point where I could think clearly and hopefully escape. I tapped for like a solid minute, and I was truly calming down. I started to feel my chest become more at ease. My thoughts weren't racing like they were before. I sighed quietly, feeling okay. I then felt a cloth, like material, lock itself into my mouth, keeping me from talking or making too many noises. My breathing became uneven once again, sweat pouring down my face. I hated when people touched me. I knew Patton had hugged me earlier, but I let it slide because even if I did tell him to let me go, I don't think he would have listened. The clothing in my mouth, the thing that had made the cloth appear, started to slither around behind me. The seat. He was covering my mouth with his dishwashing gloved hand. He had a devilish smirk on his face, and his eyes were like razors cutting into me. "Shh," he whispered to me. "Everything is all right, Virgil. There's no need to panic." His voice was low and smooth. The room we were in made his voice echo, which only added to the creepiness of Deceit's stature. My breathing had slowed a little bit, but sweat still poured down and tears were pushing to the floodgates in my eyes. Deceit took note of this quickly. "It's okay. No need to cry. Just keep breathing." He still had a smirk on his lips, which made me trust him even less. Slowly removed his hand, and I started breathing through my mouth. What do you want, Deceit?" I asked. He merely laughed and wiped a little tear from my eye. "Oh, Virgil, we're all friends here. Please, call me by my real name." He smiled, and I could see his fingers raise an eyebrow with a slightly confused look. "Answer my question, Deceit," I demanded, still breathing hard. He frowned. "Oh, Virgil, where's the fun in you? Where did the fun-loving Virgil I once knew go? He asked. His voice was echoing around me. I couldn't cover my ears, so instead I closed my eyes, and I put my head down, gritting my teeth. I hated my past. I truly did, and Deceit knew that. He knew everything about me. I hated that too. He put his closed hand under my chin and rose my head so we were looking at each other once again. He pushed my head against the side and continued to talk. The truth, Virgil. I had a realization today. He started walking in circles around me. I realized that your aura is so powerful and so amazing. I mean, did you see how fast your friends left the room this morning? They left because your aura was already affecting them. I looked at him with hatred. He cupped my face in his hands and laughed. Surely you noticed it too. Well, it was true. I had noticed it. The sudden rush of power I got while they were in my room. Like the others were slowly losing all that made them stand out from each other. Their memories, their aura, their personality. I'd felt all of that. But I couldn't tell them that at the time. I was too drained from my nightmare. He let go of my face and it continued to circle me, like a predator to its prey. The reason I brought you here is because I want your aura and magic. I intend to have it whether you like it or not. He stopped in front of me. His expression was cold and grim. He crouched down to my level and studied my worried face. Why would I ever give it to you? But do you like that? All you do is hurt my friends. Thomas. I was shouting at this point, but the room I didn't hear of any echo. He thought for a second. He looked into deep thought before he closed his eyes. He gave a hearty laugh. Oh, Virgil, don't you know? He opened his eyes. They were glowing yellow. I could feel glow surround me. My mind felt hazy, but it was too late. He snapped his fingers. Before I could think, I was free from the chair and standing up. It was so sudden that my legs still must have been asleep as I took a knee to the ground, regaining my balance. I looked up from the floor and shot right back up. I wasn't now in front of me. It was all my friends, with chains around their necks, wrists, and ankles. Their eyes were dull and gray as they looked as if they properly slept in months. Not to mention their clothing and their hair was tattered and messy. How long had they been there? I felt like crying. This can't be happening. This can't be real. My hands grabbed onto my hair as I started to feel panic bubbling in my core. Virgil! Patton had yelled out. Help us! I couldn't move. I was there, frozen and pure, as I watched them strangle. I shook my head as I tried to get a grip onto reality. No, Patton. Don't you remember? Logan shouted at Patton, which made me look up at what was happening. He is the one that did this to us. My heart stopped. Me? I couldn't believe it. I didn't believe it. No, guys, come on. I'm your friend. Right? I stammered. Heartily, Roman huffed. My eyes hugged my body as I slowly got into my knees. My friends yelled horrible names and expressions at me. I couldn't get any air inside me. I was trying so hard, but I couldn't. I felt trapped. I was trapped. What was happening? All of a sudden, my mind began to clear as the yellow surrounding my vision slowly faded away. To my surprise, the sea was standing right in front of me, and I was still tied tightly to the chair. The sea looked sad at my tear-shocked face and rapid breathing. Sad, I know, he sighed. But that was true. Look into your future. If you don't get me your aura, like I said, Virgil, your aura is powerful. So powerful it will consume you, as you saw. But don't worry. I can make the future anyway. I can make it all better. As he extended his hand to me, I felt the ropes on my ankles and wrists vanish into air. I was able to move, but I never felt so grounded in one spot before. Do we have a deal? My hands were shaking and my thoughts were whirling. Was this really what would happen if I kept my aura? What would the sides think of me if they found out the deal I've made? Am I really believing him? Sadly, I was. I still extended my hand towards him, but then He pulled back. I looked at him confused. You do understand that by taking this offer, you cannot tell your friends about our deal. You cannot ask for your aura back. And you cannot deny me when I come into your room to take your aura. I nodded. You understand that your aura removal process is time-consuming, and it'll take weeks, maybe months, before your aura is truly mine. Especially if you want to keep this a secret from the others, which we mostly definitely want you to, don't we? I nodded again. He smiled and extended his hand once more. Our hands met. As we shook on it, I got a lump in my throat. Did he really just do this? If it was to protect the others, it was worth it. He tipped his head down to where all I could see was a smile. He looked up at me, his snake eye glowing. Are you ready? In one big motion, the seat extended his arm roughly towards me. I was thrown back, hitting the ground with a big thump. The seat now stood above me. With his eyes still glowing, he spoke. Do you honestly and truthfully swear to keep the promises you have made to me, Virgil? I do, I yelled. The room was loud, like a giant windstorm was passing through. The sea made a gesture with his hand, and a magic yellow lock appeared. He threw it towards my throat as it formed into a necklace around my neck. I looked at it and back up at the seat. You have 3 strikes, Virgil. You strike out, and the lock will break. And you'll know when you've broken one of our rules. Break all 3 and well... He paused. Just make sure you don't break our rules, he said with a toothy grin. I slowly got back into a sitting position as the seat began to walk away. I quickly got to my feet and I realized I don't know where I was. Wait, how do I get out of here? Simple, the seat scoffed. He flicked his wrist downward and I began to free fall fast. The hole I was falling through was dark, but I barely had time to notice. All of a sudden, I could see my room at the end of the hole, and before I knew it, I fell onto my bed and bounced off and fell onto the floor. I rubbed my head and my vision came back into focus. I pushed myself onto my knees and sighed. I looked around. This was my room. I suddenly had a horrible pain in my arm. Pulling out my jacket sleeve to view my arm, I was words on my arm. Taking a closer look, it was the rules that the seat and I had agreed upon. A little contract was in my arm. Shit. I had to make sure no one sees it. That goes against the first rule. I gave a heavy sigh and I looked again at the lock around my neck. Then I jumped as my door began to open. Part 6. Roman. I told Logan and Patton that trouble I had found in Virgil's room. That trouble being, Virgil was gone. Patton was immediately frantic as he started to freak out. I felt bad for Patton. He's such a great dad character, and he's always trying his best, but at times it seems his best, our best, isn't enough. What are we gonna do? Where could he have gone? He could have gone far, right? I mean, we were just up there. Plus, people don't just vanish. People yelled while pacing around the living room. Logan and I simply watched until the logical character walked over and put his hands on Patton's shoulders. Don't worry, Patton. We'll find him, Logan said, looking lovingly into his eyes. Patton. Logan straightened his tie and took a step back so we could all see his face. Patton is correct. Virgil could not have gone too far. Logan turned to me. Roman, did you look anywhere else besides Virgil's room? No, I didn't. I didn't think to. I just saw he was in his room and I panicked, I said, rubbing the back of my neck in slight embarrassment. I'm not too sure if either Patton or Logan, knew I had a crush on Virgil, and saying my last sentence out loud makes me sound like I didn't even try to look for him, which made me feel absolutely awful. It's okay, kiddo, Patton chimed in. But Roman does make a point. Why would Virgil be anywhere else? Logan pondered for a second at the thought of Patton's question. He was looking at the floor, and I could see the story pieced together in his mind like a puzzle. Perhaps Virgil attempted to find us in one of our rooms, but he panic attacked and stayed inside that room. Or he started to become corrupt, much like how we do in his room. up from the floor as he said that and took a sharp intake of breath. "Search our rooms," Logan demanded. Penn was the first to sprint up the flight of stairs, while Logan and I were close to follow. My room was on the right after the flight of stairs, and Logan's was on the left. Penn and Virgil's were further down the hall, and we could see Patton fumbling to the doorknob to rush in to see if Virgil was there. Logan and I shot glances at each other before opening the door and walking inside. My room looked normal. The closet door still opened from the morning. I looked inside the closet before shutting it, making sure Virgil wasn't inside there. I looked in the bathroom, to no avail. Nothing. I was really worried at this point. Virgil couldn't have just faded. I sat on my bed, deep in thought for a couple minutes, thinking about Virgil. I really liked him, and I wanted him to like me back, too. I don't know if he ever would, though. We were opposites. But they do say opposites attract for a reason, right? He struck me like lightning as I shot up from my bed and headed for the hallway. I stopped when across the hall when in Logan's room. I saw Logan hugging and crying Patton. I made my way over and stood in Logan's doorway. I sighed. "I take it both of you had an unsuccessful search as well?" Logan nodded as Patton sobbed again. "I don't understand. My palace isn't that big," Patton stammered. His words reminded me of the idea earlier. "Hey, Logan?" He looked at me. "Have we checked to see if he was with Thomas yet?" Logan stood up and Patton still hugging him tightly. "Of course, Roman. That's a great idea. Maybe you—" Logan was cut off as Patton sprang up to his normal cheery way. "I'll go see. Will you come with me, Logan?" He asked, smiling at Logan. Logan couldn't refuse as Patton waved at me and they both sunk down. I sighed once again, and I was going to go back to my room when I stopped. I turned to head towards Virgil's room, and I paused once again. My thoughts were pushing back and forth like a sick game of tug-of-war. Just one more check in his room. It wouldn't hurt, right? I gave in to my new idea and marched towards his bedroom door. When I reached his black door, I put my hand on the doorknob and prayed silently. "Please, be here." I opened the door to see his face looking up at me while he was sitting on the floor. "Oh, Virgil, thank God!" I cheered as I ran over and hugged him tightly. He tensed up and fought against me, hissing in pain. When I noticed this, I let go of him and rubbed his arm. "Is your arm okay?" I asked timidly. He simply nodded. I took note of his lock necklace and dotted his neck. It looked beautiful on him, but I thought everything looked beautiful on Virgil. "Where did you get the necklace?" I asked. He opened his mouth to speak when we both heard a gasp from the hallway. In the doorway stood Logan and Patton, looking bewildered but happy at the same time. Patton ran over and hugged him, but as I did, Logan didn't fight Patton, even with his arm was hurt. He was probably just trying to hide it from Logan, who would question it, and Patton, who would take care of it. Wait, did he cut himself? Logan put his hand on Virgil's shoulder in comfort. "Welcome back, Virgil," Logan said, and Virgil only nodded in response. "Where did you go, kiddo?" Patton questioned. Virgil went wide-eyed as he tried to piece together a sentence in his mind. Part 7. Virgil. My eyes went wide as Patton asked me the seemingly simple question. "Where did you go, kiddo?" Such a question should have made me so anxious, but it wasn't a question that worried me. It was the answer, the all-seeing seeking, that made me sweat. The rolls were craved into my arm, were burning, probably from Roman's hug. I had a lump in my throat, and I was sweating bullets, which no one seemed to notice. "You're doing this for them, remember?" I told myself. "If you don't do this, you know what would have happened?" The voice grew angrier. I took a deep breath, trying to make sense in front of the others. I then realized I didn't know where to see it had taken me. What if I had to guess? I went to the imagination to calm down before an oncoming panic attack. I lied. "Oh, kiddo," Patton said, wrapping me in another hug, to which my scarred arm only cried more. I could only feel blood trickling down my arm. "You need anything before we leave, kiddo?" I just shook my head, quietly as I watched Patton, Roman, and Logan exit my room, similarly to how they left this morning. Once my door shut, I heard 3 pairs of footsteps shuffle away. I exhaled my breath. I didn't even notice I was holding it in. I rolled my sleeve down, and I saw a damage of bleeding cuts. My arm was stung as 1,000 bees attacked me once. I let a tear roll down my face, and I started to stand up and head to the bathroom. As I stood up, I made eye contact with the one normal brown and one snake-like eye. I yelped, and I almost fell backward when Deceit put his hand around my waist, smiling at me while I breathed hard. "Falling for me, Virgil?" Deceit grinned. He put me back onto my feet, and I timidly flushed with anger. "You made my cuts bleed, didn't you?" I asked, lifting up my arm. He scanned my arm and laughed lightly. "I see our little contract found you well." He sat down on my bed, patting the spot next to him, and I sat down too. I was feeling slightly lightheaded from my still bleeding arm, as if Deceit read my mind. A damp cloth began to float towards us from the bathroom, a yellow hue surrounding it. It entered Deceit's hand, and he started to clean the blood around the wound, leaving the contract in my arm scar. "The contract will scar, don't worry about that. However, it will bleed if you are close to breaking a rule." "Like you want me to break our rules?" I yelled. "If one of the others see my arm bleeding, they'll try to help me, and then they'll see the contract. They'll question the lock around my neck, and then my arm will bleed, and the cycle will repeat." He gave me a blank stare before standing up and placing himself above me while I sat there, frozen on my bed. "Virgil, I see your worries about all this, but frankly," he leaned in, whispering in my ear, "I don't care." He grabbed my wounded arm, making me wince. He stood me up and I lifted me into the air by my arm. I could only watch as he began to glow a bright yellow, and I could see the corners of his eyes, a purple glow covering me. I felt drained, my eyelids slowly beginning to fall. "Deceit, what are you?" "Shh," he responded. I obeyed his words. As he dropped me and I collapsed on the floor of my bedroom. Out of the energy of the breath, Deceit lowered his body to the level and smiled as I began to close my and hold slowly began losing my consciousness. "This was my first of many origins, Virgil." He grinned. Deceit stood up and proceeded to kick me to my side. I wrapped my arms around myself. He finally began to stop and I closed my eyes. "Sweet dreams," I heard Deceit say before my mind became hazy and everything went black. Part 8. Logan. When I left Virgil's room for the second time today, I quickly and calmly made my run to my room. Something was off with Virgil and his room. I shut the door to my room and leaned my back against the door. My mind was racing. Something wasn't right, but what? I went over to my bookshelf and lightly read the covers of the books. I wasn't finding exactly what I was looking for, but I knew it was there. I saw it on the top of my shelf. I picked it up and read the cover again to make sure my eyes weren't playing tricks on me. The cover was dusty, signifying the age of the book. I sat down at my desk and opened the book in my hands titled Anxiety. There were books for all the sides in the bookcase. I haven't told any of the other sides that these books existed yet, to the fear that they'd lose trust in me. It is a kind of invasion of privacy, seeing as how I now know what makes them each tick. I haven't even brought myself to read the logic book. As I was flipping through each chapter of the book, I came across the chapter that might have had most of the answers. Chapter 10. The Room and the Owner. I'd stopped merely skimming the book and fully read this chapter. As I read, I could feel the black eyeshadow start to form under my eyes. Since the books are tied to us and our abilities, it made sense. Why didn't this happen when we were in Virgil's room previously? If not to me and Patton, at least Roman. He was in there the longest. Continuing to read, I shuddered. I began to read. A side's room can sometimes work incorrectly. Anxiety is no different. However, the room cannot simply be broken, unless the room's master is experiencing trouble with their aura or are unwell. My eyes bolted upward, and sudden knock came at my door. I put the book back on the top shelf with the other side's books and opened the door. I was greeted by a Patton smiling at me, although upon seeing me, he frowned. "Oh, kiddo, you got affected by Virgil's room?" Patton asked, and had forgotten about the eyeshadow from the book. Yes, it did give me a little bit. I'm feeling better now, though, thank you, Patton, I said, quickly fixing the situation. I didn't want Patton to worry about Virgil or me. Patton put his hands on my face and rubbed under my eyes with his thumb, trying to get the eyeshadow off. I was going to move away from his touch, but instead, I melted into it. It was so calming and very soft. I suddenly stood straight up. Patton removed his hands. Is there something you needed, Patton? Patton looked at me as if he just remembered that there was a different reason he came to my room. I just wanted to make sure you were all right. You made a quick dash to your room earlier. Patton's words were so soft and caring. I didn't want to lie to him, but at the same time, what choice did I have? I just didn't want to worry about his room getting to me, that's all, I replied. My eyeshadow soon went away. Being in my own room helped that heal much faster. Pan sighed and looked back at me. As long as you're okay, Loki. That's all I wanted to know. Pan skipped down the hall down to the living room, and I chuckled to myself. I looked down at the hall to Virgil's room. It might not be the best idea to comfort him about this, but he might lie about it even worse, have a panic attack. I shut my door and looked upon my room again, thinking of all the possibilities of what may be happening between Virgil and his room. Only made me tired. I walked over to my bed, and my tired mind easily fell asleep. Okay, guys, that is it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed Losing Control by ElliottGreen333. If you like the story and want to read more, be free to check the description for Elliott Green's story and her Wattpad. You can also find my Wattpad down there where I write stories too. Be sure to subscribe if you want to continue reading the story next week or see any of my other content. And like always, do your best.